Thanks for tuning in. I'm Andy Zopp, and this is Chicago Newsroom 2.0. Sufyan Sohel, Juatise Gathings, Adrian Segura, and Francia Garcia Hernandez joined me at the roundtable this week to discuss renewed concerns about youth takeovers in downtown communities like Streeterville, as well as the increasingly more public rift between Mayor Johnson and progressive leaders within the City Council. I'll also sit one-on-one with Cook County Assessor Fritz Kaegi and Family Focus President and CEO Dara Munson, discussing property tax reform and the crisis on the horizon for Head Start programs. We'll get started on the other side of a short break. Stay with us.
Every community has a story, a pulse, a voice waiting to be heard. At CAN TV, we bring these stories to life, from the heart of Chicago to your living room. Join us in supporting hyper-local television. Your backing helps us cover what matters directly in our communities, unfiltered and upfront. Help tell the important stories of our communities. Become a program underwriter today.
Property taxes have long been a source of frustration and confusion for Cook County residents, raising questions about fairness, equity, and who's really carrying the financial burden. Over the past few years, the Cook County's Assessor's Office has made headlines for its push to reform a system many have called outdated and opaque. From modernizing assessment tools to correcting long-standing imbalances between residential and commercial properties, these efforts have sparked both praise and pushback. To share more on where the reform process stands today, what changes homeowners and business owners can expect in the upcoming assessment cycle, and how his office is working to ensure that the property tax system works for everyone, I'm joined by the Cook County Assessor himself, Fritz Kaegi. Assessor Kaegi, Fritz, thank you so much for being here today.
Andy, it's an honor here to be at the round table with you and your viewers.
It's great to see you. So first, let's talk a little bit. First of all, how long have you been in office?
So I was elected in 2018 and assumed office at the end of 2018.
Right, okay,
so we're in
great.
the middle of the
Your second term then.
Yeah, we're in the second term and a
Terrific.
little bit more than 6 years in.
And would you say it was, what did you find when you first got there? You know, we had, as I said, there have been a lot of questions and concerns about the office, a lot of questions about the fairness and equity, and a lot of problems. So what did you find when you first got there?
Sure, so when we came into office, and you and I were both Chicagoans, we've been around here for a long time, there were so many multiple layers of inequities. There were too many appeals, over 500,000 appeals, all on paper. It was 600 tons of paper just for the appeals filed in the last year before I came in.
Did you say 600 tons?
Yeah, 600 tons, more than a third of all the parcels being appealed. And study after study showed multiple layers of inequity. Homeowners at the bottom end of the price scale overpaying their share of the burden versus homeowners at the top. Commercial properties, at the largest commercial properties being dramatically underassessed, but smaller commercial properties in the neighborhood footing more of the bill. Too many appeals and outdated computer system that dated to 1979 when the Blues Brothers was in the theater.
Wow.
So we had a lot to fix.
Wow, and let's just level set a little bit and make sure that for my watchers and viewers that we talk, just make sure how does the assessment play into the tax process? So when I get my tax bill, how does the assessment affect that?
That's such a great question. There are two parts of our property tax system. There's the amount that has to be raised, which is called levies. That's about $19 billion. Think about that as the dinner bill. And so we've all had the challenge of dividing up a dinner bill. I might have had a big steak, you might have had a side salad. What's the fair way to split the bill? That's why we do assessments, not because they're fun, but to have some equity in the system. What's each person's share of that $19 billion dinner bill? And assessments determine that, not only how you're assessed, but how everyone else is assessed. And you, as a Chicagoan or someone in Cook County, you have an interest in making sure that everyone's being assessed fairly, that I'm doing this fairly for everyone, so that the division of the dinner bill is equitable.
Okay. Oh, that's great. And then the assessment then is the basis for your actual tax. You use that then to calculate the actual tax burden, right?
That's right. The $19 billion is determined by our schools.
Right.
Educating our children is about 2/3 of our property, of that $19 billion that I mentioned, and it's not determined by us.
Right.
It's determined by our school districts, villages, and so on.
Wow. And so let's talk about some of the reforms that you've made over the time that you've been there. What have been some of the biggest?
So I mentioned multiple layers of inequities that we found. One of them was in residential, that homeowners were within homeowners at the bottom end of the price scale, people who owned homes maybe under $300,000, were footing too much of the burden versus homes at the top end of the price scale. We have a graphic here that was prepared by Chris Berry at the University of Chicago, the world's top expert on property tax systems. A good property tax system for homeowners, that line should be flat.
Right.
So homeowners at the bottom end of the price spectrum paying the same effective rate as people at the top. But what we find in system after system across America is that slope where homeowners might be paying double the effective rate of people at the top. What we're most proud of is we use better data science, we use technology, we eliminated biases and favoritism, and really with a focus on equity, we've eliminated about 80% of the disparities that were there in residential assessments. And what did that mean? You know, you're a South Sider. For a typical homeowner south of Garfield Boulevard, 55th Street, the typical homeowner's bill in Chicago fell about $300, $400 as a result of reducing that disproportionate burden. In some neighborhoods on the west side, like West Garfield Park, the typical homeowner's bill fell $1,000. Who was footing more of it? You know, the homes at the upper end of the price spectrum where it was too low. But when I talk to those folks who were footing more, what they care about is just making sure that it's fair for everyone, that there's no one cheating the system. That's what makes people really mad. And so we've really done a lot on that front, and that's one of the things we're most proud of.
Well, that's terrific. And and I do think nobody likes to even think about property taxes, right? Much less talk about them or pay them. But the truth is, I think we all get the idea that people who have larger properties and values, that the rates should be fair across the burden.
That's right. And fairness is the most fundamental human feeling.
Right.
If you have two 1-year-olds next to each other, try giving a lollipop to one but not the other.
Right.
Fairness is ingrown.
Truth. So let's talk a little bit about commercial versus residential, because that was also a significant issue, and there's been not a lot, but some pushback from the business community saying the changes you've made have not been fair to commercial communities. So let's talk a little bit about, first of all, what did you find and how did you address it?
Sure. So before we came into office, there were multiple studies showing that the largest commercial buildings were dramatically underassessed. But by somewhere between a quarter to even 50% for some of the largest buildings. For example, the Sears Tower was purchased for $1.5 billion by a big investor, but it was only assessed about half that when we came into the office. So we were really focused on making sure that commercial properties were in line with the prices paid in the market, just like homeowners. Because otherwise, even if you, as a homeowner, if you're being assessed fairly, homeowners are footing too much of the bill if those were too underassessed. So the county just did a study to address this debate that you're talking about. It's the most comprehensive study ever done. It looked at the last 3 years of sales of commercial properties and compared them to assessments set by us and another county body called the Cook County Board of Review to do a test. Each one of those sales is a test. How did you do when a sale happened? And it showed that our assessments had been more accurate than this other second appeals body called the Board of Review. But the study also showed that commercial assessments after the whole appeals process were coming out too low. And the study made recommendations for making it more predictable. What the study also showed is that appeals were making the system less uniform, less accurate, less transparent. And so it really focused in on recommendations calling for more data sharing, for methodologies that are publicly known, for us and other county offices to work off the same IT platform. This is a study group convened by President Preckwinkle. We 100% endorse the findings of this study. So many of these things are things that we have been talking about for years. And now we want to be working together with our partners at the Cook County Board of Review and our county president to drive forward reforms in commercial. This is where the greatest disparities in the system are today.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Fritz. It's really been great to see you, and I really appreciate you coming.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Thanks, everybody.
On the other side of the break, I'll be joined by our roundtable regulars to discuss the growing concerns related to youth takeovers and the growing rift between Mayor Johnson and the leaders of the City Council's Progressive Caucus. Stay with us.
I'm Robin Robinson. This week on In Other News, I'll sit in community and conversation with the executive director of this very network, Darius Hillman, a dynamic new leader here at CAN TV. We'll be talking about the power of local news and the need for access for you. His story in his own words. Join the conversation on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Hyperlocal news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television.
In recent weeks, Chicago's Streeterville neighborhood has witnessed a troubling surge in large gatherings of teenagers, commonly referred to as teen takeovers. These events have escalated into violence, including shootings and property damage, raising significant safety concerns among residents and city officials. Notably, on March 9th, a 46-year-old tourist was shot near the AMC River East movie theater during one such gathering. And on March 28th, a 15-year-old boy was shot in the leg in a similar incident. In response, local leaders and community members are detailing potential measures to address the situation. Alderman Brian Hopkins has renewed calls to move the downtown curfew for minors from 10 p.m. to 8 p.m., aiming to prevent further incidents. However, Mayor Brandon Johnson has expressed reservations about this approach, suggesting that an earlier curfew might merely shift the problem to other neighborhoods without addressing the root causes. Residents, meanwhile, are urging the city to take decisive action to ensure public safety and prevent future disturbances. Meanwhile, a growing and increasingly more public rift between Mayor Johnson and leaders of City Council's Progressive Caucus threatens to further erode an already challenged relationship between the city's top executive and a group that helped put him into office. Joining us today to unpack both critical issues are roundtable regulars Sufyan Sohel, chair of the Cook County Commission on Human Rights, Juatise Gathings, co-founder, Just Act Partners, Adrian Segura, founder and president of the Luminary Collective, and Block Club Chicago reporter Francia Garcia Hernandez. Welcome back, everybody. Let's go right into, let's talk a little bit about the Progressive Caucus. So what's going on there? These are his peeps. What's up? Francia, I know you cover both the Progressive Caucus and City Hall. What's going on?
Yes, so in recent days, there were some public rifts about potential talks in the mayor's office about removing some chairs of different city committees who have been members of the Progressive Caucus and have stood behind the mayor in the past and campaigned on his behalf when he was running for election. We're talking about Andrew Vasquez, we're talking about different elders that have supported his cause, have been progressive leaders, and are now wondering why they could be left out of the committees they chair. So this is reports that we've been seeing. The mayor's office, I should say, refuted this and said these conversations have not been formal and that the mayor is committed to working with leaders and allies to move forward. But it's definitely something that leaders did not feel comfortable with knowing these conversations were happening and have asked for answers.
Yeah, they were concerned enough to put a letter together and put it in writing. I know, Adrian, do we know what that, do we think this is something they should really be concerned about, or?
I mean, it's tough, right? I feel like putting a letter puts a statement out there. I think it raises awareness, which is intentional. I think it's also tough because part of it is, conversations, when they're informal, you want to know, like, at what point does it merit an actual conversation going forward? And I wonder if this is one where, like, either A, they get ahead of it, or B, conversations were further along and they were trying to be responsive to it. Obviously, that's something that only the alders know themselves based on their own internal conversations and huddles.
And Juatise, I know you work with a lot of different leaders. Is this a leadership issue, yet another leadership issue for Mayor Johnson? That there's a disconnect between him and who should be people who should be his strongest supporters?
I think so. Listen, politics is a game of you don't have permanent enemies or permanent friends. And so when you think about what should be consistent is the interest in which they're serving of people. But I also think on the other side of that, what this points to for me is how did the information get leaked to begin with? Even if there were informal conversations happening in the mayor's office, he should be concerned not just about his allies on city council, he should be concerned about the allies in his office that he'd have these nature of conversations with that they can get back to the alders to cause this big rift. Even if he was just thinking about it, he should have the protection to talk to his internal teams to have conversations about personnel changes and think about a strategy in order to deploy that. When people jump the gun, it creates public fallouts like this, which we do not need at this time, considering what we already are dealing with.
Well, I guess we'll wait and see. Let's move on to probably a more important topic, and that is, and a more challenging one, and that is these teen takeovers. So I think, first warm days we had, we started having issues downtown. Is this going to a forebear of what we should expect in the summer, Francia, you think?
It's hard to tell, but I think at the end of the day, what we see are symptoms of conditions in the city where people don't have, and I'm talking about teenagers, don't have equal access to amenities, to programming, and to different activities that can really serve them. And when that happens, paired with social media, paired with the stage of their lives they're in, where they're teenagers, they're gonna follow what other peers do. They might not be making choices that an adult would make because they're still developing. It can lead to violent incidents. It can lead to these incidents that have gathered very negative attention. And I have to say, we see a lot of these coverage and we see a lot of the images from the videos and we see the fallout and we see people getting hurt, but we also are not seeing what teenagers are missing, right? They're there for a reason, and what is missing in their communities, what is missing in their schools, what is missing at home that leads them to go out and seek entertainment, adventure, a place to gather with friends downtown that can potentially turn dangerous.
Sufyan, there's also a challenge with the fact that now we also have guns, right? So if you have a bunch of people, whether it's teenagers or adults, there's likely to be a gun present. Does that complicate matters for people, you think?
It does, and I think the questions we should be asking, what you were saying is like the why. How are they getting guns? Why are they having guns? Why are they choosing to respond, react in these ways? And I don't think there's enough of that happening. Rather than fix a problem, we don't want them in our neighborhoods, we don't want them in our communities. And I think we need to take a step back and think a little bit of why are guns so easily accessible to these youth? Why do they feel that this is their only path when it's warm out to do these sorts of things? And what should we be doing to support our youth, especially our Black and brown youth, so they're finding more meaningful ways to spend their times? Is it investing in more community resources and spaces, safer spaces? Is it to empower those communities with more mental health and activities, arts and sports activities? And I don't think there's enough of that conversation happening, rather than, hey, there's a problem, mayor, fix it.
Right. Although I had to tell you, if it was my neighborhood, I'd be in the, hey, there's a problem, mayor, fix it. Great. Adrian, I don't know. I also wonder, why, when they come downtown, do they have to rage, right? I don't mind that they're there in a group. I mind that they're kind of rampaging and you can't walk down the street safely. I think that's the question. Adrian first, then I'm coming there.
There's research that A Better Chicago pulled together, and they presented it last week. And the reality is, I think 95, something I saw is 95% of youth are excited and optimistic about their future. And I think to your point, right, we're not tapping into that enough. But what also was clear in that survey is we don't have enough safe spaces, third spaces, for youth to actually be meaningfully involved. The adults create the spaces we think they want, but we do it based on our own vantage point, and kids end up not using it, not leveraging it. And so I think that a big part of what I focus on is helping co-design solutions with people that solutions are intended for. We don't do enough of that with youth. We actually don't give youth the benefit of the doubt that they know what spaces they actually want and to engage with, and how they want to engage with them in their communities. I think there's a real opportunity here for the Johnson administration to try to do something differently. We historically have taken a top-down approach, and we throw money at problems and we say, mayor, fix it. But no one's actually going out and doing the work of talking to youth and saying what types of programs, what types of initiatives, what types of spaces do we need to create in our neighborhoods? I also think downtown is the people's downtown. And so there's also this reality that like, we don't want kids to just stay in Humboldt Park where I grew up or in Auburn Gresham. We want them to fully experience the city that we have people from around the world coming to want to experience. And so they should be able to enjoy their backyard. But then the question is, how do we do this in a way where we're not demonizing our youth, but instead are truly, trying to tap into their potential and creating more spaces for them.
You were going to say
Sure,
something?
and I'll add to that, I live on the south side, but the reality of it is the Loop doesn't deserve to be any safer than any other Chicago neighborhood. And our kids deserve to be able to occupy spaces. Now, why I think we are struggling quite a bit is caring about what young people actually care about. And if takeovers is what they want and what they value, then the mayor has to figure out a way to creatively have youth-serving organizations do that. We've spent so much time focusing on public safety where we're forgetting to go downstream to figure out, we're pulling people out of the river and figuring out what's wrong with them. But like, the reality of it is we have to invest in our young people. Mm-hmm. We're not doing enough of that. And I do think as we think about every Chicago neighborhood, this speaks to the amenities that are lacking in communities. And when you mix kids from different pockets of neighborhoods with different interests and backgrounds, it creates what we are seeing. And so we have to figure out how to invest in each individual community to keep our kids in the communities in which they can thrive in order for these things to be prevented. And we're not there yet.
We are out of time, as usual, because you guys always have great and thoughtful and insightful things to say. So thank you for taking the time to be with me. Appreciate you. On the other side of the break, I'll be joined by Family Focus's Dara Munson to talk about the devastating impacts that the shuttering of Health and Human Services offices in Chicago and across the country will have on critical Head Start programming. Stay with us.
CAN TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN TV On Demand.
As families across Chicago rely on early childhood programs to build strong foundations for their children, recent developments at the federal level have sparked new concerns. The unexpected closure of several regional offices of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, including the Chicago office, has left Head Start providers across the Midwest scrambling for answers. These offices served as critical lifelines for grant support, technical assistance, and oversight, and their disappearance threatens to disrupt services for thousands of children and families. Joining me to discuss this critical issue is Dara Munson, the president and CEO of Family Focus, one of Chicago's leading social service agencies and a trusted Head Start provider. Dara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Andy.
Thank you for coming. So first, let's just tell everybody a little bit about Family Focus and what you do there.
Sure. Well, Family Focus was founded, believe it or not, 175 years ago.
Wow.
We were founded during the cholera epidemic. And our goal was then, and always has been, to provide a safe place for families, for children, so that they know that they are loved. And we do that through whole family support. So today, Family Focus serves 20,000 children and families, individuals, throughout Northeast Illinois. We do that through early childhood education, youth development, family support, including immigration services. Our goal is to support the entire family. So there's no wrong door with Family Focus. And I would like to see the families that we serve find their liberation and increase their socioeconomic status. And we do that through evidence-based programming.
Wow, well, that's wonderful. 20,000.
20,000.
Wow. So, I mean, you provide a lot of services, and probably a lot of services besides Head Start that are being impacted by these cuts. But let's talk about Head Start, because it's such a long-standing program and so important. I think it's kind of assumed at this point that early childhood education makes such a difference in people's lives. So tell us a little bit about what's happened here and the closing of the offices and how that's impacted your organization.
Well, Head Start has survived every federal administration for 60 years. Right. It is a program that is tried and true, and it is actually an anti-poverty program. We know that the work done through Head Start allows children who traditionally, or historically I should say, live on the margins, to have a safe place, to be educated with high quality, standardized initiatives and educational services. So knowing that Head Start funding federally is about $12 billion a year. The number of children that have been served since its inception is remarkable. Those children today are doing amazing things in our community. There are Head Start alum across the country and here in Chicago doing amazing things. So to have that program, have those offices closed very suddenly leaves grantors, grantees, and providers without support that creates uncertainty. So we don't know. There's some grants that end April 30th, which is around the corner. There's some that end September 30th. We don't know what the sustainability of those funds look like. That is a very, very dangerous place to be. And it is in fact pulling the rug from children before they even can walk. And these are children that are being raised by families that are traditionally under-resourced in disinvested communities who want the best for their children. So all the families want the same thing: high quality education, healthy food options, which Head Start also provides. The other thing I think is important to note is Head Start is a pathway to success, and is also connected to other government assistance programs that blended together actually support families. So it's not just the Head Start funding that's at risk. It is the ability to create the fabric that Head Start provides that is foundational to so many other services.
And stabilizing.
Absolutely.
And so when the offices closed, there was no information provided about where you should go or who you should talk to about the upcoming grant extensions? Or did you just close them and said, don't call us, we'll call you, or here's your contact in Washington? Or?
Here's your contact in Washington. So 5 of the 12 regional offices have closed. So there's a consolidation of offices, which means the individuals who work for the Office of Head Start, qualified, tenured individuals who are no longer employed, their work has shifted to another regional office. So those offices are
now inundated with
absolutely,
new work.
Absolutely. And so to be able to do the same work that provides the infrastructure, the oversight for offices that are now closed leaves everybody uncertain. So there are delays in payments, there are delays in receiving just regular decisions, which impact day-to-day operations and makes the children of Head Start even more at risk because there are quality standards that we have to ensure as a Head Start provider. So the very infrastructure is now questionable.
Dara, I could spend some more time getting angry with you, which is what I think we're about to do. But I want to just say thank you for the incredible work that you're doing to support those 20,000 family members and to provide them the support so they can thrive, and really continue to contribute and enjoy this incredible city. Thank you for your work. I really appreciate it. It's really nice to see you.
Thank you, Andy.
That's our time for now. CAN-TV Executive Director Juatise Hillman will fill in for me next week for a special live edition of Chicago Newsroom 2.0, featuring a one-on-one conversation with the new CEO of Howard Brown Health, Dr. Travis Gales, and a roundtable discussion with LGBTQ leaders Jolie Robinson, Darius Caffey, and Shannon Lynn Parker. Until then, be well and well informed.